Remember, God led you here for a reason. The question is, what will you do with it? Have you ever felt like you just don't belong? Like no matter how hard you try, you see the world differently, you think deeper, and your soul craves something more? If so, you might be one of the chosen ones. But here's the hard truth. Being chosen doesn't mean an easy life. In fact, it often means walking alone. But why? Why do those with a divine calling often feel so isolated? Today we're diving deep into this mystery. We'll uncover biblical truths, ancient wisdom, and the hidden spiritual battle behind this loneliness. Stick with me, because by the end of this, you'll not only understand why you feel this way, but you'll also see the incredible purpose behind it. Let's begin. The weight of the calling. Why God sets chosen ones apart. There's a pattern in the Bible that's impossible to ignore. Every person God called for a great purpose walked a lonely road. Take Moses, raised in Pharaoh's palace, yet never truly belonging. He fled into the wilderness for 40 years before God called him to lead Israel. Or Elijah, the prophet, who stood alone against 450 prophets of Baal, calling down fire from heaven. And let's not forget Jesus himself, surrounded by multitudes, but often retreating to solitary places to pray. Being chosen means being set apart. The word holy in the Bible literally means set apart. And that's exactly what God does with his chosen ones. He removes them from the noise, from the distractions, from the influences that could distort their mission. It's not punishment, it's preparation. When you feel alone, when friendships fade, when people misunderstand you, it's not because something is wrong with you. It's because God is refining you. He's stripping away everything that doesn't align with your purpose. The weight of the calling. Why God sets chosen ones apart. There's a pattern in the Bible that's impossible to ignore. Every person God called for a great purpose walked a lonely road. Take Moses, raised in Pharaoh's palace, yet never truly belonging. He fled into the wilderness for 40 years before God called him to lead Israel. Or Elijah, the prophet who stood alone against 450 prophets of Baal, calling down fire from heaven. And let's not forget Jesus himself, surrounded by multitudes but often retreating to solitary places to pray. Being chosen means being set apart. The word holy in the Bible literally means set apart, and that's exactly what God does with his chosen ones. He removes them from the noise, from the distractions, from the influences that could distort their mission. It's not punishment, it's preparation. When you feel alone, when friendships fade, when people misunderstand you, it's not because something is wrong with you. It's because God is refining you. He's stripping away everything that doesn't align with your purpose. The energy that makes people uncomfortable. Have you ever walked into a room and felt the energy shift? Maybe people stare, maybe they avoid eye contact, or maybe conversations just change. Chosen ones carry a presence that unsettles people. It's not arrogance, it's not ego, it's the light of God within you. And that light does two things. It attracts those who seek truth, and it exposes those who run from it. Jesus himself said in John 3:20, "Everyone who does evil hates the light, and will not come into the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed." When you walk in truth, you make people uncomfortable, not because you're judging them, but because your very existence reminds them of the things they're avoiding. I remember a story of a young man named David, not the biblical one. He was on fire for God, always speaking about faith, about living righteously. But instead of being celebrated, he often felt like an outcast, even among other believers. One day, a friend finally admitted, "It's not that I don't like you. It's that being around you reminds me of how far I've drifted from God." And that's the reality. People either draw closer to the light or they run from it. And when they run, it can feel personal. But it's not. It's spiritual. Mere. When even family doesn't understand. And one of the hardest things about being set apart is when your own family doesn't understand. Jesus knew this pain well. In Mark 3:21, even his family thought he was out of his mind. And in Matthew 10:34-36, he said, "Do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother. A man's enemies will be the members of his own household." Faith has a cost. When you choose to follow God's path, some relationships will shift. Not everyone will understand your hunger for truth. Some will call you extreme. Some will distance themselves, and that's painful. But Jesus reassures us in Matthew 19:29, "Everyone who has left houses or brothers or sisters or father or mother or wife or children or fields for my sake will receive 100 times as much and will inherit eternal life." What you lose in this world, God restores in ways you can't even imagine. The hidden strength in solitude. Now here's where the shift happens. Loneliness isn't just a burden. It's a blessing in disguise. Think about it. Moses received his calling alone in the wilderness. Elijah heard God's whisper in solitude. Jesus fasted and overcame Satan in the desert before starting his ministry. God meets people in solitude. He speaks when the noise of the world is silenced. So instead of seeing isolation as rejection, see it as an invitation to draw closer to God, to deepen your faith, to hear his voice more clearly. This is where inner alchemy happens, the transformation of your soul into something unshakable. This is where faith over fear becomes real, turning isolation into purpose. So how do you move forward? How do you navigate this path without feeling discouraged? 1. Embrace the solitude. Use it for deep prayer, Bible journaling, and spiritual growth. 2. Find your tribe. There are others like you, maybe not in your immediate circle, but they exist. Seek out communities that align with your faith and purpose. 3. Create from your calling. Write, sing, teach. Whatever God has placed in you, share it. Your voice matters. You weren't meant to fit in. You were meant to lead. You are not alone. I know it's hard. I know the loneliness can feel unbearable at times. But hear me, you are not alone. God sees you. He knows your struggles, and he has a plan. Maybe this video is the confirmation you needed. Maybe this is God's way of reminding you. You were set apart for a reason. And one day when you step fully into your calling, everything will make sense. Until then, keep the faith, keep walking, and never forget. You were chosen for such a time as this. If this spoke to you, share it with someone who needs it. And most importantly, keep seeking, keep growing, and keep believing. Until next time, may God bless you on your journey, my friends.